做下，原來我哋開會。今日安排咗2次會議，喺呢一節會議結之後呢，我哋休息10分鐘。第二節呢喺下午5點。
And the next session will start at 5:45. If members have direct or indirect pecuniary interests on the items to be discussed today, please disclose the nature of such interests before you speak. I also urge members to pay attention to voting arrangement in case of direct pecuniary interest under RP 84. The first item is FCR 2017-18-7. Members are invited to approve a commitment to eject $5.45 billion as equity from the Capital Investment Fund or CIF to the Hong Kong International Theme Parks Limited to support an expansion and development plan at the Phase 1 site of the Hong Kong Disneyland Resort. I declare that I am an independent non-executive director of the Bank of East Asia. Members did not request a separate voting on the proposal at the Finance Committee. Chairman, may I speak? Yes, but do you know where we are at? We are talking about the site for persons with disabilities. You realize that no government official would answer your question, right? All right, Ms. Tanya Chen. Chairman, on the sites for PWDs, I understand that no public officers will answer our question. However, this is still very important. You have 3 minutes. I did not take part in the meeting last time. And on the comments we offered last time, even though no government official relevant is in attendance today, I hope that they will still follow up on it and respond to our requests. Next, Dr. K.K. Kwok. Chairman, earlier I requested public officers to attend the discussion, and I still feel that we need to do something soon. It doesn't mean I have no comments on the school in Tung Chung Area 108, nor am I satisfied with the government's policy on PWDs. And the voting was delayed, and this is not something members can control. At Area 108 for the school for PWDs and boarding school, we have requested for them for a long time, and due to different views in the district, they were introduced late to the Finance Committee. For a lot of schools, I hope the government would not just look at Tung Chung. If they tackle Tung Chung alone, the problem would not go away. This school doesn't mainly serve Tung Chung students. In the entire New Territories, when need arises, the students might need to come to this school. So the government's policies on such schools and mentally handicapped students are very poor. At Tuen Mun, I saw a special school without a ramp, and class is incorporated right in front of the ramp, and this is very dangerous, and parents were not invited to speak on the design, so this is outrageous. I will certainly monitor what the government is doing, especially the Education Bureau, and there are a few things we have to do in terms of design. First, you have to invite parents to take part, and they are the users, so they should be invited. Secondly, for facilities of the school, including future transportation, let's remember that parents from other districts might also send their children here. For other schools in the future, the government should work on all districts for more special schools because the waiting list is very long. A lot of children have missed the first few golden years. Dr. Fernando Chang, thank you. We certainly support the construction of a special school in Area 108 of Tung Chung. The need has been long-standing. There are more than 100,000 people in Tung Chung, and looking forward at East Tung Chung, there would be another 100,000 people. So you can see that the population at Tung Chung New Town Extension would rise rapidly. For students with special needs in Tung Chung, if they are to enter a special school, they have to go to Chunwan or Chengyi. And even the special schools in Chunwan and Chengyi are inadequate. If they have physical handicaps, they might have to study in another district. Some might have to go all the way to Lam Tin, or even Kennedy Center at Sandy Bay on the island. This is not satisfactory at all. Even with this special school for the mildly to moderately handicapped, some students might not meet the requirements. And even though the relevant public officers are not here today, for the relatively remote Tung Chung, the provision of special schools is inadequate. I also want to point out that the program was proposed by the Education Bureau in 2004. At that time, they said there was a need to build a special school for the mentally handicapped in Tung Chung, but it was allowed to drag on. And there were objections from district personnel, and there were media reports recently, and the project dragged on for more than 10 years. And Mr. Fan Chi Peng said in an interview that he was concerned about the issue, and he felt that schools might not have enough manpower to take care of their kids. I think it was a form of discrimination. And at some districts, when the government wanted to introduce certain facilities, for example, special schools, sheltered workshops, they met objections from district personnel. I hope the government should stay tough on such in such scenarios. I think we shouldn't have to wait that long. This school should have been built a long time ago. Dr. Edward Yu, thank you. First of all, I have something to say to fellow members. At the Public Works Subcommittee, I requested a separate voting at the Finance Committee. Subsequently, on the request of the government, they demanded that no separate voting is needed. I requested that a special meeting be convened, and after that meeting, I asked them to provide details of the relevant tender documents. And according to the government's requirements stipulated, if there's any delay in the project, and they might not meet the anticipated completion date ahead of the school year in September, and on the government's request, I examined the relevant documents, and at the end I agreed that no separate voting would be required, and I also wrote to the chairman of the FC saying that I no longer demanded separate voting. I hope other public officers would understand that for similar projects in the future. If due to special reasons, for example, if the details of the tender documents would affect the projects, please provide the information to LESCO at PWSC as soon as possible, so that we know why special treatments are given. That way we would decide whether separate voting would be required, and we can make an earlier decision, and that way we can avoid dealing with the paperwork later. We can see that more communication is often required, and we also require the government to provide more information and evidence to facilitate our decision making. So hopefully we can come up with an agreed practice, so for future public works the proposals would be raised at the PWSC meetings. I think there's a consensus that we would not discuss this issue because no public officers are present. If we no longer have such trust, then future consideration would be different. I hope you would only speak when there's a need to do so, or you can choose to talk directly to the public officers. Well, you can continue, but please finish what you want to say in one go. Mr. Lam Chuk Ting, well, I am new to LESCO, so I want to clarify what you just said. Do you mean that we should not speak? If I support this, I did not quite catch your point. Can the clerk please explain the matter? Chairman, this item was discussed at the subcommittee, and the relevant members said that they requested a separate voting at the Finance Committee, but on the government's request, they withdrew such requests for separate voting. And no relevant public officers are present at the meeting to answer members' questions. Generally, for items that do not require separate voting, they would be put to the vote quickly. I think this is what the government meant. A point of order. Chairman, I want to clarify what you just said. As you know, the gentleman's agreement is that we want this to pass as soon as possible, but members do have different views, including the 10-year delay, issues with the policy for FC meetings in the past. Dr. K. Kwok, what is the point of order you want to make? You have to clarify this, or else please stop speaking. Dr. Lau Siu Lai, you have 3 minutes. Chairman. I wasn't familiar with the relevant issues, so I did not offer my views at the subcommittee. However, recently I met parents of children with special learning needs, so I do have something to add. I support the item. The item serves to build a school cum boarding house at the islands, and parents made it clear that the number of boarding places is not enough, and the government feels that mildly mentally handicapped children do not need boarding places, so there are only 60 boarding places at that school. But a lot of parents don't know how to take care of their kids, so they hope that the government can introduce more boarding places. If you are saying that it's very hard to add more places, would you instead offer more support to parents and organize some training so that they know how to support their kids and help with their learning? I think you should do either of the two. That would be better for the parents. As for the commissioning of the boarding school, it's 2019. According to information provided by the government earlier, in 2019, for Tung Chung and the islands, the demand by mentally handicapped children would be 170 places. So basically, all the places would be, new places would be saturated immediately. I urge the government to build another school as soon as possible to take care of future needs, because by the time they complete, it's we are talking about a few years down the road, and at that time there would be new demand from the districts. For the islands district, I think this is a rather strange concept. Is it the distance longer from Tung Chung to islands or to Hong Kong Island? Do we need schools at all districts apart from the islands district? I hope the government would also build such homes in Hong Kong, Kowloon, and the new territories to take care of the students' needs. Mr. Siu Ka-chun, you have 3 minutes. Thank you. I recently visited some residential homes for the disabled in a private RCHD. I met 4 youngsters aged 8 to 17 with mild mental handicap. So this is highly inappropriate. You have people of different ages with different levels of impairment. And these are very young people, aged 8 to 17, and their development would be affected. Schools are being built, and there would be 200 places for the mentally handicapped children, as well as 60 boarding places. This should go ahead as soon as possible. But there are a few things I want to speak on record, even though no officers are here today. As other members have said, the project has dragged on, and this is related to the concept of not in my backyard. And this doesn't just happen with children's homes and RCHDs. It happens at a lot of areas. For example, street sleepers' homes and outreach teams. Why are they always located next to refuse stations? When I was a social worker, I saw such scenarios. Our outreach teams would visit areas near refuse stations, and the outreach office would always be located near rubbish stations, and this is food for thought. Even though the proposal would be passed, I hope the government would deal with the concept or effect of not in my backyard. And at private care homes, I saw 4 youngsters, and it showed that the 60 residential places won't be enough. I agree with Dr. Lau Siu Lai. If we are to build schools, build a school, can we have more than 60 residential places, or would that be the maximum? And how would you distribute the 60 places? What about children with different levels of impairment? What would be the ratio? I would like to know how the precious care places would be distributed. Thank you. Ms. Odin Chow. Thank you. I would be very quick. The construction of a special school has indeed dragged on for a long time. I'm a member of the Equal Opportunities Commission, and internally we have been talking about when it can be done. And we have had ample discussions earlier at the PWSC. The Islands District lacks special schools. So I hope that the progress can be sped up. I also urge the government to review other districts that lack special schools. Can the government review its policy? And if there are calls from certain districts, can they negotiate so that they would accept special schools because there's a real need for them?
方面嗰個政策咯。
I hope the government will review its policy. Let Mr. Lam Cheuk Ting, Mr. Chow Ho Ting spoke well. Now, as members representing the public, we must speak on measures to help the public. Now, looking at the project, now starting in 2004, the Education Bureau wanted to build it, but all along, people in the district objected and time has been wasted. There were strange reasons, like security, concern that the school wouldn't be able to look after the children properly. Now, these are rather discriminatory remarks. The children and their parents really need the facilities of the schools. Now, there are inadequate places and residential places in the territory. The government has to do more to try to find the land and facilities for these children. Regrettably, the government all along had heeded the people in the various districts who were unreasonable. So this is irresponsible. Now, the child may be quite different from regular children, and the delay from 2004 to 2017 has been quite a long time. The children have grown up in the meantime, so they lacked the care they should receive. Now, these community facilities are very important. Now, just now, Mr. Shiu Ka Chun talked about the not in my garden rationale. Now, in every district, there are certain people who are disadvantaged and they deserve special care. This is social justice. Now, I think the government should be firm in its stance towards objectors who object for unreasonable reasons, so that the projects are not delayed for over 10 years. Now, how can we be responsible to the children and their families if there are such long delays? The government should review why the project has been so delayed. Next, Mr. Yik Kin Yuen. As a representative for the education sector, I support the funding. Now, as we all know, this funding is to open a school for the mentally handicapped in the islands district. Priority would be for those in the islands. Others from other districts can also make use of the school. Residential places are provided in this new school. There is a great need for such schools. Time has been wasted already. Now, some people are having a discriminatory attitude towards these special schools in their districts. Now, in Lantau, there was a school that proposed to move to Tuen Mun, and we dealt with that case last year. So this is very undesirable. So I call upon the public and the government to work together Because if you have children with such conditions, then you would know that these facilities are very important. And when you get to know the problem better, you know that these schools have no adverse impact on the district at all, and they increase the likelihood of services being provided, and they give rise to other kinds of community services in the district. So I call upon everyone to support special education, special schools, and different varieties of these schools. Right now, we hope that in the future, the government can complete the project as quickly as possible so that the children can enjoy the service. Mr. Kwok Wing Hang, now we all support this project, but members need to speak because quite a few members here, including myself, Mr. Shu Ka Chun, and Dr. Fernando Chung, are very concerned about special education. We spend a lot of time and effort on this. Dr. Fernando Chung and I jointly came up with a motion for the welfare of children with special needs. So we must put it on record that even though some people are concerned that these schools might adversely affect the district, I must say that in that case we would be a society lacking in conscience, but that's not the majority view of people in Hong Kong. We must devote more resources to develop special education. This is very important for our children. A study showed that if children before the age period of 3 to 6 did not receive the special care needed, then they would be adversely affected in their education, in the way they develop in their lives. So the entire society is responsible. So we very much support this item, and we do not wish to see another project being delayed in a similar way. Leung Kwok Hong, it's a 12-year delay. It started in 2004, and it was only discussed in this chamber in December last year. Now, the resistance came from those members from certain districts. They must be, I'm sure, from the pro-establishment camp. Don't blame us for filibustering. It's been 10 years. Now, I started to be a LegCo member back then, and now I've been in 3 terms already. In my district, there was a DAB member who tried to get facilities for residents. He asked for compensation by way of a playground or a park. Now really in the district, they engage in filibustering. If you don't provide compensation, if you don't do this or that, then they come after you. Now, now in the previous case, there was a member who objected to a similar facility in the district, and that's from a member from a pro-establishment camp. So I'm saying don't blame the members all the time. We can filibuster only a month or 2, but in the districts they filibuster for years. Now, you were not a member in 2004, were you? Now, the administration is not represented here, and we say, let's move quickly. And Dr. Fernando Chung said that too. Now, why do I reiterate? It's because now it's for the government to try to catch up. Of course, they are not here. And maybe there will be further objections. Some people might object when the time comes. So the chairman cannot do any filibustering stopping actions. Two pro-establishment camp members, two special needs schools. One was named Fan Chi Ping. Claudia Mo. Now, Shiu Ka Chun mentioned the not in my backyard mentality, and I got quite sad. Now, in English, they call it NIMBY for not in my backyard, and then add ism at the end, so it becomes NIMBYism. Now, I thought it was just about wind power generation. I thought schools would not be affected. So when I heard that this kind of mentality was applicable also in school-related projects, I was quite disturbed. Now, it's said that some people in the district said where there are special schools, then it's dangerous, quote unquote. And some said that they worry that the schools won't have enough manpower to watch over the children. So it's as if the children are ogres. Now, so we should be compassionate. Now, there has been such a long delay. If you look at if you hear about the history, you know what I mean. Now, we should quickly approve this project. However, you have to put things on the record in LegCo. It's unlike in the districts, they talk for years. But in LegCo, if we speak for 2 or 3 minutes, you think this is too much. So this is not proper. Now, on special schools, I'm reminded of the Ethnic Minority Subcommittee. Recently, there was a report from the government. I think it's from the EOC. It said that special schools are for children with special educational needs. Now, it said that the children with these needs, they were unable to receive education only in the ratio of about 5%. Now, among school children of ethnic minorities, when they leave the school and they stop receiving education, I think the percentage was over 50%. I think it was 57%. I hope that government officials would be here to tell us what's the impact on these children. Chen Chi-chun. Now, why do we have this item in this juncture? I like to make clear. Now, we didn't we thought we want this item to be approved quickly so that funding is available. Now, don't blame the opposition. Now, we all in the past we wanted to communicate with the government. Now, maybe you use it as hostage. If you put this item here, then now if we single this out, it would certainly be at the end. Then it would be after the new police new positions, and that would take a long time. Now, last time there was the social welfare item that didn't require separate voting, and it was quickly voted upon. Now, this time we communicated, and it's right at the head of the agenda, so it can be voted and approved quickly. But members wish to speak a little, so let them speak. Now, you take it out, only 1 day's notice, and then it's put at the end of the agenda, and it takes a long time. Now, of course, the chairman would take action against filibustering. Now, this is really not a controversial item. It suffered many reversals in the past. Now, I'm against discrimination. I'm for looking after the disadvantaged. Now, the minorities, their interests are often ignored. Now, fortunately, the society is more acceptable of the minority groups, disadvantaged groups. Now, very often there isn't proper communication, but as major parties, you should help the government to communicate with the public. You shouldn't just try to get the public to object. Now, there are no officials here. We just want to express our voices, our opinions against the objections in the districts in the past. Sure, it takes 3 minutes. Now, maybe you are a bit nervous, so some acts get now you tend to be regarded by you as a major plot. Now, well, it's just about the Disneyland item. So you see, so you try to appease the members and put this item in the beginning of the agenda, and now I hope we can continue to develop our mutual trust. Please do not be so touchy. Now, we will speak when there's a need to speak. Now, this item was already discussed in the education panel and in PWSC, but government hasn't heard some of what members said. Now, this has been delayed since 2004. Now, it's by the time it's built, it's almost 2020 if there's no delay. And the PWSC, it's the development panel, is discussing some major projects for Tung Chung. Now, the Tung Chung new town is in great need for expansion. 260 to 70,000 in population. And in education panel, members said that you are still working on the basis of 200 school places, 60 residential places. Is that enough? And the administration said that, well, it's been so long, so don't propose any change now. Well, I understand that maybe we can't have a major change, but you must have some flexibility. Now, it's only 1 or 2 stories in height. Now, if in construction you leave greater flexibility so that there is room for expansion, now then you leave flexibility for future expansion. Now, as we all know, as the member said, there can be opposition all the time from the district. Now, you say there is no space, you have to put it elsewhere, then you might have another delay for another 10 years.
Yeah,
Thank you. Well, I don't know whether you are filibustering. I just hope that you understand that it's very easy to damage the trust, and it takes a very long time to rebuild our trust. Well, because we've worked very hard to try to move up this item, so I do hope that you're not really trying to filibuster. Mr. Jeremy Tam. Well, thank you, Chairman. I want to tell you that you don't have to have so many doubts because I really support this item. Because for items that really benefit the public, I support for sure. I just have a couple of questions. How many students do you estimate there will be, and in future, how many students can you really accommodate? Oh, this is something that I hope the administration will go back and think about it. You don't have to answer me right now, and I do have some recommendations for future developments that we could really help the special needs children, and if there is a need to expand, whether it would be more suitable to expand at the current premise or to move it elsewhere. I just want to express my view that I really do support this item. Thank you. Mr. Leung Yew-chung, 3 minutes, please. Thank you, Chairman. We also support this item because we know that parents of these children find it difficult to take care of them and look forward to moving their children into schools with accommodation. But as Mr. Eddie Chu said, you're only able to provide 60 beds right now. Is there a way for you to expand in the future and to provide more spaces? It seems to me that SEN students are increasing by the day, and we're not able to really accommodate all of them. So I do hope that you would be able to consider further expansion. So this is something I hope you would reconsider. Usually, SEN schools would be built in more quiet or rural areas. The EDB has expressed the view that air conditioning is not for the comfort of the children. Instead, it is to try to reduce pollution. So I want to ask whether air conditioning facilities would be provided for this school. Mr. Leung Yew-chung, I'm sorry, there is no administration here today because we thought that this could be something approved very quickly. Usually it would take only around 10 minutes. You've all expressed many of your views. Maybe I could relate your view to the EDB. Well, because this is very important, because for SEN schools, I have fought very hard all these years to try to fight for air conditioning for them, to no avail. And we need to settle it privately. It's very hard for us to win a court case because the EDB suggested that air conditioning is provided only to eliminate noise pollution. And because the SEN schools are usually built in quieter areas, the EDB said that there is no need to install AC for them, and it's not a very ideal situation. for some children with degeneration of muscular deficiency, it's very difficult for the children to endure the heat. Well, if there are no further questions, I'd like to put this item to vote. Dr. Fernando Chung, yes, I know that we can only speak once, but I do have some recommendations I'd like to put on record. Can you just give me 2 minutes? Does anyone else like to speak? I just want to talk about the AC. Well, you know, we do not have any representative here because we just thought that we'll be able to approve this very soon. How about I contact the EDB and ask someone to contact you afterwards? Oh, Dr. Fernando Chang, yes. Area 108 was originally used as redevelopment for a Chai Wan Hong Si San Fai Primary School, but as that school was originally in Area 27, and so it's now redeveloped in this area. I just want to put it on record that the Chai Wan San Fai school still has a need to redevelop, and I do hope that the government will also take that into consideration. That's the first point I'd like to make. For Area 108, Heng Zhong Yip School for SCNs, accommodations would be provided, and there would be special arrangements made for some of the children with higher level of mental disability. So I do hope the EDB will discuss with the educational group early, because there are only 60 beds for accommodation right now. And as Mr. Chiu Ka-jun said, when we go visit some of the private the RCHDs, we would see that there are some of the children living there as well, because there are not enough boarding places for these children. So I would just like to put this down on record that we should try to increase the number of boarding places, and that these should be provided around the clock. All right, I'd like to now put this item to vote. For those in favor, please raise your hands. For those who object, please raise your hands. I believe that the majority approves this item. This item is now endorsed. Now let us move on to FCR 2017-18-1. Members are invited to approve a commitment to inject 5.45 billion as equity from the Capital Investment Fund to the Hong Kong International Theme Parks Limited to support an expansion and development plan at the Phase 1 site of the Hong Kong Disneyland Resort. I'm a NIED of Bank of East Asia. We have Secretary So present here to answer questions. Mr. Chihotek, well, on March 27th, you gave Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, Mr. Yu Chong Yim, and I, in accordance, you gave a letter to us on FC21, and you said that since we didn't send it to the Secretariat 6 days in advance, we would not be entertained. Last Friday and Saturday, well, you made a decision on Saturday to object to FC21, so you only made the decision on Saturday. So how can we have 6 full days to submit it to you? because you do not use your discretion to give us 2 whole days to work on it. We don't have any other chances, Chairman, because Mr. Gregory so said that he also believed that this would be the last time that Disneyland would be here asking for money. So if you don't give us the opportunity to submit FC21, then you are actually refusing us the right under Basic Law 73. How can you just refuse to take our letter without the 6 full days? Well, you know, I have the final decision because I'm the chairman, and this is not actually a matter of rules of procedures, but I respect your view. If you could draw reference from the rules of procedures, I have to say that then you would understand all the normal procedures. Well, I can talk to you after the meeting. Well, we just have. Well, in your letter, Chairman, I just want to say that that you have now refusing our letter, because how do you know that this is the day of voting? Because if today is not the day of vote, then according to calculation or according to your standards, there will still be 6 full days. So how do you make this calculation? So if you're not able to vote today, and if we move on to the next meeting, then how can you recalculate? Because I'll never be able to catch up with you, Chairman. Mr. Chu, well, there is a method, you know, to try to catch up, but I'm not going to discuss this with this further. Dr. Fernando Chung, for this discretion, if we have to work in accordance with 21 or 29 to move a motion, you said there would need to be a 6-day notice, but actually the FC only gives from the on items only gives a 7-day notice from the government as well, and very often they cannot submit it within 7 days. But I see that you, as chairman, and other chairmen have also given them or allowed them less than 7 days notice. So I'm just concerned, Chairman, that after receiving a motion and during the time you submit to the Secretariat, there would still be a time lag before we could move the motion under FC 21 or 29. Well, I understand what you mean, Dr. Chung, because we have discussed that 3 or 4 hours. We understand that this is not ideal. Therefore, I have contacted the government that in the future they must also submit notice on at least 6 full days in advance. 6 days is really not enough, you know, because it should be 8 days, because you would need to give 6 days for the members to submit motion and 2 days for other members to view it. Well, yes, you know, I've also learned something from it. So I'm going to issue a circular to members in future. But then for the Disneyland item, I used my discretion in the first meeting. Well, this is not a very ideal procedure right now. But, you know, I've only given my discretion the first time. I cannot continuously give discretion in future. I cannot allow you to, you know, continue to submit motions. You know, no, I don't want to discuss this further with you. But rest assured, I do have my reasoning. I'm not sure that it's not that I read it for 5 minutes and decided not to go ahead with it. It's not as Mr. Chu said. You know, I did really look through this prudently and conscientiously. I hope Mr. Chu will understand that we're going to continue with our communication after this. Well, yes, that's why, you know, I allowed you to do so the first time. I hope you understand that, you know, we are already talking about whether this could be extended. We've already discussed this once. So that is why, you know, I allowed you to do so the first time. we really do have to move into the item right now. First one, Dr. Fernando Chung, the last round, 3 minutes. No, Chairman, I really do want to make clear of the rules of procedures first. Well, yes, first listen to me. Well, yes, I can discuss this with you again, but just for a little bit of time, because we've discussed it for a very long time already. Well, Dr. Kwok, we're talking about rules of procedure, right? We would need to go into the item. I do not hope that people who are watching TV will think that we are filibustering again, because I really should not discuss with you further my decision. I hope that you will understand. Dr. Fernando Chung, 3 minutes. Well, Chairman, yes, I understand that, we cannot go against your decision, but you need to give us your reasoning. But right now, the situation is not ideal, because the notice is really limited, and we would never really have time or ample time to submit our notices. Well, since the mechanism has not been improved, can you use your discretion to really allow members to move motion and to be able to use the powers given to us under the rules of procedure, because we're talking about very important funding matters right now. This is not something against rules of procedure, because this is the power of the chairman, because you're able to reduce the notice period to 2 days. Mr. Michael Tien, do you want to talk about Disneyland or talk about rules of procedures? Well, no, I'm talking about the usual 3 minutes. No, okay, all right. Mr. James Ho. I agree with Dr. Fernando Chung. Well, we cannot rewrite history, but since the rules of procedure allow members with FC21, then you really must make sure that members are able to do so under these unideal situations. I don't think you should only give discretion the first time. Instead, you should allow all members to have a chance. Oh, I'm sorry, I've been a electrical member for 20-odd years. I'm continuously learning, but this is something new, and I've never done it before. So when I saw it, I did believe that there is something we need to do, because the situation is not ideal and it's not very fair to others. Dr. K.K. Kwok, can you please turn on the microphone for Dr. K.K. Kwok? Chairman, I'm talking about the logic behind the rules of procedure. You've already said that the government has not given enough time for members. Therefore, under these circumstances, you really must maintain fairness in the meeting. Mr. Chu, as you said, has given you notice of less than 6 days. First, because the decision has been made till the decision that you made was very, very late. And secondly, well, you need to be fair. Even if you want to help the government, you cannot do so that obviously, because you are setting a very bad precedent. Well, you've said that you have consulted the legal advisor. I do want to understand from the legal advisor why the chairman cannot give more discretion. All right, so how about you all speak before I respond? Mr. Dennis Kwok, well, I've seen your decision and I don't understand why you haven't dealt with it, because in accordance with 2B, there are terms and conditions, but your decision only dealt with the conditions that you could add on additions. Well, that is your view, which I do not concur with. But Mr. Yu and Mr. Chu have raised issues on terms. These terms would need to regulate the CS how to use the funding. You have not dealt with how or when these terms could be brought up. So are you not going to deal with the terms to pretend that nothing has happened, or are you going to make a decision on the terms as well? Mr. Leung Kwok-kong, 1 minute. Chairman, well, when you gave discretion, the first time you said that it was the first time because there has been no precedent. And now, we don't have enough time to submit it. You have to understand that we are working for the people of Hong Kong for their benefit. We are just adding some terms, but your decision did not consider the terms. You just said that has nothing to do with the funding asked from the government.
You are not giving us any discretion. What would be the result? Because you expected the item to be passed today. That's why you returned our motions. This is already the third day, and next week would be enough. So your motivation is clear. You are not helping us monitor the government, but the other way round. I do not agree with what you said at all, Mr. Leung Kwok-kong. I would offer a response. My decision this time is different from last time. Last time, the motions were out of order. The rule of having 2 clear days was not observed, and I allowed them even though there weren't 6 clear days. And for the second time, I did not allow them because I decided to stick to 6 clear days. I won't dwell anymore on this. We will come back to the question. Dr. Fernando Cheung, 3 minutes. I already made a decision. If you want to hear legal advice, you can make an appointment with the legal advisor. Dr. Fernando Cheung, 3 minutes. The second decision was about the period of giving notice. Perhaps you can make an appointment with the legal advisor. Dr. Fernando Cheung, 3 minutes. Chairman, this is regretful. We are playing gatekeeper by coming up with reasonable questions, but you set a limit of 3 minutes. We wanted to introduce terms and conditions to give some fairness to this unequal treaty, but you did not allow such amendments from members. We can only say that your behaviors gave the impression that you are defending the government or even Disneyland. You made a declaration of interest. You have a role at the Bank of East Asia. I have no doubts towards your character, but as chairman of the Finance Committee, what you did was highly regretful. The government has been ignoring the monitoring from LegCo, and all along the agreement has been unfair to the stage that certain pro-establishment members did not like what they see. Since Tung Chee-hwa's time, the Disneyland project was unfair, and we are investing more than 10 billion, but they only had to invest 2 billion, and we were only the majority shareholders by a small margin. And for the 400 hectares in the Site 1, it hasn't been fully developed, and for Phase 2, a 20-year contract was granted, and they could exercise it whenever they want. This is unreasonable, and this is really a disgrace to Hong Kong. And now they are coming back for more money. They talked about the profits they made. They talk about internal returns, and they are just bloating. Secretary, what would you say? Is this a case of bloating the entire project? Chairman, over the past decade or so, the government did its best in narrowing the status of both parties. In 1999, and the difference in capital injection was $6.9 billion, and the difference has since been narrowed to $1.2 billion. So we could see the resources allocated by Disneyland. What about the infrastructure costs? You ignore them. I have received more than 40 motions moved under 37A, and the submission would lapse soon. Mr. Michael Tian, 3 minutes. I spoke about the unequal terms and conditions since day one. I also urged the pro-establishment camps that while they support the item, they should think twice. I support the chairman's decision because I'm the vice chairman. Well, if you said 3 minutes, then that would be it. I'm also a pro-establishment member. I did not ask questions for the remaining time, and I gave my time to the secretary. Greg, just a few simple questions. For the Disneyland project, did Carrie Lam ask you to deal with this project expeditiously? Yes or no? Yes or no? I can only say that this is a decision of the entire government. Over the course of discussion, did the Walt Disney Company tell you that if funding cannot be secured within the current term government, the deal would collapse? In our negotiation with Walt Disney, whether for the current or next term government, we came up with the best solution. Did you issue an ultimatum to yes or no? Secretary, yes or no? Chairman, Walt Disney said this was the best solution. Did they say that if this is not passed this year, it would lapse? Did they ever say that if this is not done within these few months, they would not come back? The Walt Disney said this is the best solution they could offer. I already offered an answer. Finally, you said this was the best deal. The Paris Disneyland in 1994 to 98, royalties were exempted, and from 1999 to 2003 they received 4%, and since then they charge 9%. Now we are paying 7.5% in royalties on average, as well as management costs for a total of 9.4%. Did you ask the Walt Disney Company why the terms for Paris Disneyland were more favorable? Why couldn't we enjoy the terms of Paris Disneyland? I already explained it. Did you tell them about the terms of the Paris Disneyland? Your time's up. Dr. K. Kwok, 3 minutes. Your time was up. I will give him another minute to answer Michael Tian's question. Did you ever fight for the same terms as Paris Disneyland? Yes or no? In earlier discussions, members already asked about the management costs of Paris Disneyland, and the managing director talked about the unique scenario of Paris Disneyland, and it was different from Hong Kong. I'd like to invite Mr. Eddie Lee. All right, I think that's enough. Mr. Lau, have you ever told the government that this is already the best deal? Yes or no?
I mean, I'm not part of the negotiating committee, and so these discussions are between the two shareholders.
即係你而家揾一個喺迪士尼入邊連個談判嘅唔知。
In other words, you do not know about the negotiation. Are you trying to fool the Legislative Council? We asked a lot of crucial questions, but you refused to answer them, and you refused to say whether it was the final deal. So where is the urgency? As you said, there's no urgency. What about other tourism projects? The $8 billion cruise terminal is the joke of the world, and now for Disneyland, the world is watching how Hong Kong signed this foolish deal. Michael Tian and Abraham Sheck are businessmen, and even they could not hold themselves. They said that these are very poor deals. And Regina Yip also supported a motion under Rule 21. When we look at we asked for accounts, but they weren't produced. I talked about the design and concept, costumes, and so on, and the total was 40 or 50 or $4 to $5 billion. How could you force Hong Kong people to accept this? There's nothing urgent at this point, and the new term government is coming very soon. Unless this is related to the plan of having an artificial island under the Plan 2030 Plus, which is why the government was forced into a corner, and that they have to pay the $4 to $5 billion. The themed areas like Frozen are outdated, and Chen Kin Po is siding with the government. I want to invoke motion to adjourn proceedings. Please give your reason. I don't want to help him filibuster, so I would put up with him. Can you? You have 3 minutes to explain why you want to move a motion to adjourn. What are we really discussing? The key of the whole discussion is that why was this agreement signed? Why are the royalties so high? Over the course of negotiation, why didn't they bargain for better terms? We asked why they had to sign this agreement because of the plans for an artificial island under 2030 Plus. They refused to answer. And for crucial things, for example, I asked about the design and conceptual budgets for games or rides. I asked for details, but they simply said they could not provide further details. We are talking about taxpayers' money. It's more than $5 billion. And with more, they have more shares with the extra funds. It doesn't really matter for the Walt Disney Company. So why can't you show us the real figures or real accounts? And the money comes from the Hong Kong SAR government on infrastructure and other things. but Disneyland simply quotes us some figures orally. If you are to spend $5 billion, you can put the money on a lot of tourism projects. For example, by developing ecotourism in Sai Kung, you don't even need that much money. For the $5 billion, the pro-establishment members are saying that this is a disgrace to the people of Hong Kong. You always talk about Hong Kong as an Asian international city, and you have a lot of elite businessmen. But if you show any businessman this deal, it's a joke. No one would ever conduct business this way. We are trying to discuss this at LegCo, but the chairman is extremely biased and he's not allowing us to speak, and he's only giving us 3 minutes. A lot of some members only get 3 minutes and no more. Even if you force this through, the watching audience can see that this is disgraceful, and I hope the management of Disneyland would hear this. You have all the perks, but no one would respect your organization. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong. Chairman. Members have spoken, including those from the pro-establishment camp, and we only have one purpose, and that purpose is actually achievable. The government should make a U-turn. They should go back to the discussion table and see if they can renegotiate with Disney. Why can't that be done? Did Disneyland issue an ultimatum that there would not be any deal if it's not passed within or by June? You received questions from Regina Yip and Michael Tian about Paris Disneyland. We are getting the worst terms, and Japan, for the Japan Disneyland, they don't need help from the government at all. And Paris and Shanghai Disneylands are receiving more favorable terms than us. While we are suffering bad terms all the time. And you said you have to be, you have to hold yourself accountable to Disney. Well, this is ridiculous. Well, we are talking about real money. Well, I don't think Disneyland is that powerful. Let's not talk about the 60 hectares of land. The chairman is extremely biased. He gave discretion the first time but not the second, and the reason was that if this drags on, perhaps more pro-establishment members would not like the idea. To be honest, even if this is not passed, you would simply go back and come back for voting later, and there's nothing we can do. I don't see how the pro-establishment camp has to vote in favor of the proposal. We asked questions and you said you wouldn't answer, or that you don't know. And the reason is that we have someone called Chen Kin-po. He would fulfill his mission no matter what. I want to go on record as saying that if the chairman forces this item through, then he will forever be a culprit. Whenever Disneyland comes back for more such deals, just remember that Chen Kin-po is a culprit. And under his chairmanship, the proposal was forced through, and he must hold full responsibility. And in the past, people supported you, but look at now. Ms. Alvin Young. Chairman, the Disneyland project should have been a good opportunity for public debate on the use of public money and on how we should adopt this mode of operation. And the mode of operation for Disneyland is actually not really in line in Hong Kong. We seldom operated such large-scale business in the past, and this is actually a very good opportunity for debate. Whether or not we support the expansion, we should have an open and in-depth debate on whether the government should incessantly invest public resources on a business. But we have not had any substantial discussion. The government simply told us that they started already and they had to go on. But is this our public finance philosophy? Is this accepted by the public? We had no such discussion. The pro-establishment camp merely echoed the government in saying that this is already the best deal given the circumstances.
We are like a management board. We are the gatekeeper for public finance. How should public funds be used? The civic parties felt that the government wasn't being wise in its spending, in its budget. Now, it's not a very big sum compared to other infrastructural projects, but that's not the issue. We should make sure the money is well spent. Now, if the $5-point-something billion is injected, now shouldn't we have an exit plan by the government? We haven't heard that. Now, this is what the LegCo should do. Or should we just try to get things passed quickly? That is why we are so concerned, because we see where our responsibility lies. We want to generate more discussion, meaningful discussion. Unfortunately, the administration isn't willing. Now, I'm disappointed that in handling the Rule 21 initiative by Mr. Chu, you didn't try to accommodate the debate by members. You are trying to help the government. Tung Chung, 3 minutes. I believe the chairman, you understand, you appreciate our concern, that is whether we can get the best deal. Now, this shows that all along the government hasn't really tried to convince LegCo. It hasn't tried to convince members who are guardians for the public purse. You haven't convinced that the $5-point-something billion is worthwhile. Now, Michael Tian just now asked some good questions which the Secretary didn't answer. Now, in this legislature, the officials have the responsibility to respond, but they don't really answer. They just provide some response that isn't really answering the question. Now, very often the chairman says that, the Democratic camp have already voiced their views, so you don't really care whether the answers were received. You just said that, the question has been asked 10 or 20 times. But the fact is that the officials haven't provided the answers, so the system hasn't been effective. The officials felt, well, I don't have to convince you. If I drag on enough, the chairman will cut the filibustering. So you don't really have some measure of how the questioning should relate to the magnitude of the sums involved. You just try to halt the procedures so the officials drag their feet until the time runs out. So how can the legislature operate? Those pro-establishment members who let it pass in the panels, now you shouldn't go on supporting the government as members of LegCo. Tung Chung, 3 minutes. I support Kwakaki's adjournment for proceedings motion. Now we should kill this item so that we can deal with others. Now, I meet many members of the public on the street. They come up and tell me not to support the project. Don't give the money to the Disney company. Just now, I spoke to a person who chairs a TV show, and he said that in the Tung Chung days, now the economy was poor, and so the government had to accept some undesirable terms. Well, he said that's understandable. However, it's been over 10 years. Given the current conditions, do we still have to accept such unreasonable terms and pay money to them? You tell us that you already gained some advantages in the bargaining, but these improvements are really very little. So what's the urgency? Now it's almost the end of April. May is coming. In 2 months' time, the new term of the government will take office. Now, why don't you leave it to the next term? Maybe the next term of the government will do a better job. So don't just try to save your own face. Let the next term of the government try to get better terms. So why can't you wait for 2 or 3 more months? There is a further important question that I asked last time, but the Secretary didn't really answer. It's been so many years. Has the government thought about quitting? He didn't really answer, so we know that the government hasn't thought about it. So you just try to please the other side. You cannot get favorable terms in that case. Kwok Wing Hang, just now, Michael Tan asked some very important questions. Of course, he's a very successful businessman, and the questions he raised are of key importance. That is, whether the Disney company has said to the government, take it or leave it. If you don't accept it, we'll just leave it. Now, just now, Mr. Greg So didn't answer. Maybe he didn't dare or didn't know how. Now, the executive vice president said that he didn't know because he didn't sit on the negotiating committee. Now, so we have to get a clear answer, because this is a very important question for members to decide whether they support the funding. Now, if the Disney company says if you turn this down, we'll go back and we'll think of other terms so that Hong Kong taxpayers can gain more benefits, well, that's a possibility. So there is no urgency. $5 billion is a lot of money. We can strive for better terms so that the public money is better spent. So the waiting for this improvement is worthwhile. Now the Vice President said that he didn't sit on the committee, and Mr. Grexel couldn't answer whether there is a deal that's take it or leave it. So we don't have the crucial information we need on how to vote. And secondly, on how you dealt with the issues raised by Choi Dick and Yu Chung Yin. Now, you didn't deal with the subsidiary legislation that you talked about the conditions. You said that they can it only allows the financial secretary to give indication of how the money should be used, but the provisions is talking about provisions and conditions. Now, members are now talking about the terms. The terms should be included in the agenda. Now, you haven't dealt with why the terms couldn't be added. That's why you said, that's why your ruling is very problematic, because you didn't deal with whether the terms could be included. Next, Lau Siu Lai, 3 minutes. I support Kwok Kaki's motion for adjournment. Now, all these weeks, the officials sat here, but they didn't really answer questions. Now, the Vice Chairman, Michael Tian, asked some questions. Some of members asked similar questions before. The officials never really provided genuine answers. Now, the past couple of weeks have been the same. We want substantial answers. Why is it that we haven't got better terms like those of Disneyland Paris? Why is it that we haven't had a better strategy of negotiation? Last week and the week before, I asked whether we could have a third-party investor. Now, have you tried to find such an investor? Are there criteria? Now, you haven't disclosed that. This is a duty that you owed since 1999. Now, last time the officials said that the time is not ripe. Now, so why is it that in 1999 you said that it could be done next year? And more importantly, why can't we reduce the holding so that the Disney company gets the shareholding for itself and it will do a better job? And why don't we introduce more competition? Now, the officials sat here, but they are very expert at saying a lot of things, but that don't have any content. Now, adjournment is for the officials to do something substantial in negotiations to defend Hong Kong people's rights, and not just sit here in meaningless talk. Now, when we go to into the community, the people ask whether our officials are conniving with foreign capital. Now, we have been devoid of better options over the past 18 years. So we should adjourn so that next week they provide better answers. Chu Hoi Tek, 3 minutes. Chairman, just now Mr. Alvin Yeung expressed the wish that there could be more time for debate. I supported the motion for adjournment. I'm not asking for more time for debate. I think it's time for decision. Now, in the meetings in previous weeks, I think this legislature and the public are aware that the Finance Committee have the power to decide whether to support this funding. Furthermore, it can strive for better terms, the terms and conditions that Mr. Kwok Wing Hang referred to. That is, we can pass the motion subject to certain conditions. This is not just a wish by the pan-democrats. Mrs. Regina Yip also set a good example for the pro-establishment camp. Now, I haven't called you a royalist. I've been calling you a pro-establishment member. Now, we should interpret this term positively, so you have to set an example. Now, you might think you need to support the government, but that doesn't mean that it's unconditional support. It doesn't mean that you employ many procedural tactics so that this committee is unable to debate the issue. If the pro-establishment members are all like you in serving as chairman, and you deprive the members of their rights, then we are not doing our job. Why is it that we support adjournment? We want to use Rule 21 to propose our conditions, and then after adjournment you have 6 days for the matter to be raised in subsequent meetings. I'd like to remind you, our next meeting is 2nd of May, that's next Tuesday. Mr. Fernando Chung, what is $5.45 billion? Now, if it's paid to the elders so that they can go to residential care homes, now the cost is $15,420 per unit per month. That's the budget. Now, the government has to subsidize to the extent of $15,000. Now, $5.45 billion will allow nearly 30,000 elderly persons to be cared for in these homes for a year. Nearly 30,000. Now, looking at the figures of the SWD for those on the waiting list, there are 26,900 elderly persons as of the 31st of March this year. Now, if the government's injection is spent on the elderly, then immediately the entire queue would be cared for. Now, in the past decade, the queue is getting longer and longer. Now, in the debate of the appropriation bill this year, the government told us that in the past year, 6,000 elderly persons died while on the waiting list. If we use the resources properly, if we don't pour the money into unfair treaties, if we do not continue in this unfair practice where we pay hundreds of millions of dollars in patent fees and royalty to Disney company, if we had used the money properly, we would be able to help many people. Today we want to rectify this unequal bargain. We want to introduce some reasonable terms. You stand in the way. We want to propose some useful ideas. The government doesn't heed us. Now you count enough votes and you don't allow us to filibuster. You limit us to the last 3 minutes and then you have to vote. This is the collaboration between the government and business. There is so much social grievance, but there is no grand reconciliation because you are helping the other side.
Mr. Chen Chi-chun, previously we've had an unfair agreement with Disneyland. Well, at that time, Hong Kong was suffering from an economic downturn, and therefore it seemed like we had to beg for Disneyland to come ahead. But now it's like Mickey Mouse holding a gun to our heads, and Secretary So opened the door to them. Ms. Chairman, do you want to also be an accomplice as well? Well, I submitted the 37A very early, only around 12. I'm not talking about over hundreds of motions. I'm not sure whether he looked at it very carefully. He said 8 of them were eligible, but he told me to pick 4. How can you pick? What do you mean by picking 4 out of 8? If 8 of them all comply with the rules, then how come I would have to pick 4 out of 8 members, whether it be FC or council? This chairman and the president have been trying to limit our time in deliberation. Well, you might not think there is a much difference in council, that it would be the same if it's 60 hours or 30 hours, but you can see that the golden halo has been reduced. Well, I'm not going to argue with this, but 8 of my motions, you tell me to pick 4, and then you tell me that I can submit more. I know that you are not going to entertain them, because even if I submitted 8 early, you still told me to pick 4. I'm not giving you some sort of fishbowl theory that I only have 3 and you get 4. But this is exactly what's happening. You are actually using the rules of procedure to control the time, just like the council meeting. Well, if we're discussing for over 100 hours, then of course you would have to try to cut it short. I have to be fair to you, Chairman. You haven't cut back the hours from day one, but then we're not getting any answers from the administration, because the Disneyland and Secretary So are just waiting for the vote to be passed, because they know they don't have to do anything more. So I agree with it. Ms. Sari Lee, well, I object to adjourning proceedings because we have discussed this item for a very long time, and I think that it's time to vote. There are tens of items waiting in line, and I think that we have heard all the objections, and it's time for us to vote. Oh, Disneyland whether it be expansion or fund mobilization, finds it difficult when it comes to the FC, because it would seem that Disneyland already is at fault because of the unfair agreement. I'm sure if we don't get this passed, even if it is brought to the next government, it wouldn't be put up to LegCo right in the beginning, because it is very difficult to face LegCo members. We all know the problems we encounter. If we believe Disneyland is a tourist infrastructure that we need, then we should consider allowing this item to be passed. I don't think we should waste any more time, and I object to adjourning proceedings. Mr. Jeremy Tam. Chairman, in the discussion of Disneyland, we see that there are many issues that the government has not bothered to respond or try to evade from answering. We hope to relax the height restrictions around Disneyland. And in the beginning, we wondered whether you want to use that as a development of the East Metropolis. And then after a period of time, from the perspective of an user, as I go to Disneyland quite often, I see that there are many management issues compared to Disneylands in other cities. There is a beauty and beast craze all over the world right now. Why do we not make use of this opportunity? The characters are sold out very quickly, and for the free some of the free stickers, they were given out and given out all in the first 2 days. So if you look at it, there should only be 2 million people going into Disneyland each year, but then now there are less tourists because we're losing to the international market. Disneyland however said that you're just going for local tourists, but this is something you need to work on. You need to create more job opportunities to make it more attractive so that overseas visitors would come as well. It seems like Disneyland is not working hard enough. Disneyland only considers the mainland market as its main market. You calculate the EBITDA of 6.5% as the general management fee, and then it will be 0.8% from this basic EBITDA. In 2015, EBITDA, after taking 6.5%, would still be charged even if there is a loss. And this is an answer that we only got in the last meeting. So you made profit of 800 million, but you only lost 150 million. And Hong Kong people continuously need to pay for the management fee. Dr. Yu, in the last meeting, I kept on following up on risk management and benchmarking, but after many days, I still haven't yet seen a written reply. Chairman, if you refuse to give us more time to answer questions, and you can see from the side of the government that they are very relaxed right now, they know that you are going to stop our discussions at any time now. And we cannot really monitor what they're doing. Government is asking for public money, and I expressed very clearly last time that there must be a return, and that we should look into the relationship between the risk and the rate of return. I've already given you some examples from overseas. If you work in investment, if you do not disclose all this, then this is a violation. You have not provided us with any information, and therefore we cannot make a vote without being informed. This is just like a fraud. You tell people to invest in a stock without knowing of its risk. The SFC requires a disclaimer that investments could either gain or lose. You don't even give such a disclaimer. In future, when there is really a loss, who's going to be liable? Right now, you're asking us to make an uninformed decision. You are forcing the public to pay for $5.45 billion. We should not put this to vote right now. You need to give us with all the information. Otherwise, we really should not make such an uninformed decision. Ms. Claudia Mo， 我支持要停要休會，我呢就係揾
journalist called Jake van der Kamp. Now, can I quote him how he started his piece? Quote, "Well, whoopie-doo! Exclamation mark. Here's to the real worth of a profit of $109 million on revenues of $4.3 billion and an investment of more than $20 billion. After declared losses of $3.8 billion since 2008, and who knows how much more since the opening in 2005, but we won't ask," unquote. That's the lead of his piece. And in the fourth paragraph, he said, "But it's still possible. In fact, I think likely that Hong Kong Disneyland has been a success story, ... for the Walt Disney Company," unquote. The Disney Company, its mother firm in California, America. I did try to ask, didn't I, a couple of times, exactly how much Hong Kong Disney contributes to the to Disney's mother firm's parks and resorts net profit. I hit the wall. You gave me a blank stare and said you're not here to offer such data. And I did try over the last weekend online to research into the Disney profit accounts and things, but the numbers were so dismal, the information so scanty, I couldn't get anywhere. I just couldn't figure it out, but I would suspect not too much on the whole. So we're talking about Disney getting a royalty of 10% of all admission revenues, and it's got full management control, blah, blah. Am I going to veto the thing. Not necessarily. I'm quite prepared to approve your fund application as long as you are willing to have attitudes conditions attached to the New Deal. But you're not willing to do it.
田北辰議員
Are you?
3分鐘。
Mr. Michael Tan, 3 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. Members of the public, I, from the pro-establishment camp, is objecting to this item because of the attitude of the government. A member that I really respect, Mr. Abraham Sheikh, earlier said that although he supported verbally, he doesn't really support it from the bottom of his heart. What about me? I don't support it verbally, my brain doesn't support it, my heart doesn't support it. And another very reputable member, Ms. Dari Lee, expressed her view that even if Disneyland doesn't set a date, that even if this is not passed today, she actually is sure that Ms. Carrie Lam, the elect CE, would be able to come up with much better terms. Well, if we are to bargain with Disneyland, today is not the most appropriate time. It's actually the beginning of 2019. That would be the most appropriate time to put this on the bargaining table. Why would I say this? Because by then, the 85.3 billion XRL project would be commissioned, and $200 billion worth of infrastructure would bring many unexpected visitors. And when Disneyland sees the increase in tourists, and then maybe by then they would think of actually charging the management fee in a different way. If you see such a high increase in visitor numbers, I'm sure that they would agree to reduce the percentage, because the profit would be even larger than what you have put on the table today. This is the worst ever time to bargain with Disneyland. It's a very stupid of us to do this right now. Mr. Kwang Chun-yu, well, as Mr. Michael Tan said, this is the most stupid time to bargain with Disneyland today. We see that we're talking about 5.45 billion. If we can use this money elsewhere in Hong Kong, we will be able to help many people. Although this has nothing much to do with the Disneyland representatives today, we really must try to guard our wallets. There is not only Disneyland in Hong Kong, there are many other destinations in Hong Kong that can attract tourists. Well, yes, the public will not naturally object to the expansion of Disneyland, but we don't know whether you're going to win or lose in the future. The Secretary has said that this would be this would be used in all other tourism infrastructure as well. So why do we have to invest so much in Disneyland? Walt Disney launched Disneyland and Disneyland Resort. Well, he wrote Pinocchio back then. And the story was about a wooden puppet wanting to become a real boy, and he told many lies. But then, after overcoming all difficulties, he could finally become a real boy. Walt Disney has passed away for many years. If he had known that you're asking for so much money to expand in Hong Kong, and there is no guarantee that Hong Kong will have an advantage over it, and whether this is the best solution for all, there is no answer right now. I'm sure that Walt Disney himself would have been very upset that it would turn out like this.
He said that everything comes from the mouse or Mickey Mouse. If Mickey knows of such injustice in the funding, what would they think? So this is back to the expansion itself. So we need more room, and we need to fight for more room and time. Can we fight for a better proposal or solution? This is the worst timing indeed. Time is up. Please, we will resume at 5:55. Thank you.